Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 601. I am Jun Mo Xie. Jun Mo Xie and Mei Shuayan slowly approached the group. The men seemed to have spotted them as well. One of them shouted a command, and 9 people put on their old tattered shirt properly. With one man as the lead, the 9 people walked towards the duo in a neat formation. They were very serious and their formation was neat and orderly. This was how army soldiers received guests. Only 9 people came forward, while the rest did not bat their eyelids as they continued doing their work. The 9 people stopped in front of them. The leader was a man who seemed about 40 years old. He had a stubbed chin and an obvious scar on his face. He rapped one fist with his other hand and greeted the duo. May I ask if Mr. and Miss are here to pay respect to Marshal Jun in the mountain? Yes. Jun Mo Xie said nicely. Uncle, may we trouble you to help lead the way? Jun Mo Xie realized that these people were his father's loyal soldiers. They had been here for a decade just to guard Jun Wu Hui's tomb. He felt that he had to treat the man in front of him with great respect, simply because of his unmovable loyalty and determination. If this was not a good man, there would be no good man in this world. Even though he had memories from his previous life, where he met great characters as well, it was still extremely previous to meet such good people in this life. Jun Mo Xie's respect was sincere and deep-rooted. Jun Mo Xie calling him uncle made the man confused. These men all went through wars and a lot of events. They were street-smart and thus extremely sensitive. He turned and exchanged look with a few others. Although he looked less alarmed after turning back, he still asked, "Well, I don't think you need to address me so respectfully. I am but an uncultured man. May I know which family are you from?" "I am Jun Mo Xie." Jun Mo Xie took a deep breath. As he said his name, he felt a tad of sadness in his heart, as if at that moment, his entire soul had become one with this body. Jun Wu Hui's son, Jun Mo Xie. You said you are Jun Mo Xie? Really? The uncle. Wang Meng's face changed drastically. He took a few steps backwards and his look at Jun Mo Xie changed. It was an expression that was very hard to decipher. There was a mixture of different emotions in his eyes. Respect, anger, happiness, and even motivation. His lips trembled as he said, "We welcome the 3rd son of the family, but did you bring the family heirloom?" Jun Mo Xie looked away and he removed a jade pendant that was tied to his belt. He passed the pendant to Wang Meng. It was a green jade pendant. There was a small blood orchid symbol on top and a gold word Jun written under the flower. There was also a sentence engraved at the back, "Live righteously, never fall to the dark side." Which is the meaning of Mo Xie. This was the symbol unique to the Jun family. And this pendant was the proof of Jun Mo Xie's identity. As he holds the heirloom of the Jun family, the uncle's hands began to tremble and tears welled up in his eyes. It's been so long. Jun. This word has left us for a decade. A good 10 years and now it is finally back to us again. Even though Jun Tian was a healthy old man, he was getting old. So in these few years, he had only been here twice. Jun Wu Yi was paralyzed and his wrongdoings made him too shameful to show up to visit his dead brother's grave. He could only send his housekeepers here for a few times every year. Jun family's pendant. The descendants' pendant. This man in front of him was the only son of their marshal. Suddenly, Wang Meng cried and knelt down. His voice was trembling as he said, "Wang Meng hereby welcome 3rd Master, God had been kind." You finally grew up and become more understanding. If Marshall knew, he would be proud. It was as if Jun Mo Xie visiting his blood-related father's grave was an unbelievable and rare miracle. Wang Meng, uncle, please don't do that. Mo Xie is in no position to have you like this. Jun Mo Xie got a shock. He immediately tried to help Wang Meng get up. Many feelings welled up inside him. And his eyes, too, were turning red. Since a few years ago, words had got out that Jun Mo Xie was irresponsible and obnoxious. The rumor that he had amazing skills only managed to spread in recent times, but people in the rural areas had yet to know about this, and they still thought of him as the useless boy. However, the fact that his visit had such a big impact on his father's soldiers made Jun Mo Xie really nostalgic and sad. Son paying respect to dead father. This was such a natural thing. But now that he was there, Wang Meng was so excited and impressed. It was obvious that their expectations for him were really low. This also showed how low of a person Jun Mo Xie was before. With his face wet with tear, he turned back and shouted, "Everyone assemble! Great news! Jun Third Master is visiting our marshal. His third son. Everyone gather at once. Come welcome him." The crowd started boiling. All the people threw their shovel and ran towards them without shirts. Everyone was super hyped up. One of the older men were running and crying. "Finally you are here. The marshal must have waited for you to visit him for very long. The gods finally answered our prayer and his son is visiting him. This must be one wish fulfilled for our marshal." As much as Jun Mo Xie was a calm and composed person, he could not help it but tear up. Their sincere happiness was making Jun Mo Xie feel guilty. They crowded around Jun Mo Xie and Mei Shui. Everyone's expression was the same. Pure happiness. After they got over their excitement, they started chatting non-stop with the duo. "Third Master is indeed the son of our marshal. Look at these eyes. Just as wise as that of Marshall's. No, I think the mouth is the part that looks most like Marshall." This was exactly how Marshall would gently purse his lips together, with a little cruel but determined vibe. He was dead serious and would look like this every time he gave a command. There was once I lifted my head discreetly as he was giving us command, and I got a shock when I saw his serious face. "Your eyes are all failing you. Look at his eyebrows. Typical sword-shaped brows." Back when Marshall defeated Sword Soul Zhao, as he gave the main command, his eyebrow was raised like this. I felt that we were bound to win at that moment. As they chatted on and on, somehow their voice gradually got softer as it faded to silence. It was all reduced to the same mumbling. "You really look like Marshall." Slowly, all of them had teary eyes. Suddenly, one of them started bawling. He sounded extremely sad as he stuttered, "I feel like I just met Marshall again. Your face. I will see it in my dreams every day. Finally, I feel like I just met Marshall himself again today. Why didn't you come earlier? Marshall and we have all been waiting for your arrival." With this man to start crying out loud, all the others too pursed their lips and clenched their jaws. They were all trying hard to stop their tears from flowing, but they all failed in the end as their tears fell non-stop. The face they had been dreaming of for a decade. Sadly, the person was no longer Marshall himself. He's the son of Marshall. As for Marshall, seems like we will never see him again. Tears were raining down. These manly people were all bawling their hearts out. Who says real men don't cry? They just have not been at their saddest times. True and sincere men would cry their emotions when they were at their saddest state. This strong emotion even got to Mei Shui. The pretty lady turned to the side, but she could not hide her sadness. This was the first time Jun Mo Xie saw other people's tears, and he tried really hard to console everyone. With this, everyone finally stopped crying and were all wiping their face in embarrassment, as if they just did something shameful. In an attempt to change the subject, Wang Meng wiped off his tears and gave a weak smile and said, "Third Master, who is this miss?" With this question, everyone's eyes fell on the beautiful girl who was together with Third Master, and got excited. Could she be? "Uncles, this lady here is my wife. Her surname is Mei. Haha, today's trip was also for father and for you all to get to meet her. How do you all find her?" Jun Mo Xie smiled and introduced Mei Shuayan. "Really?" Wang Meng jumped in joy and laughed. "You have such a pretty and nice lady as your wife. If Marshall was to know, he would be really happy." Everyone was smiling from ear to ear and looking at Mei Shuayan with a doting look. They seemed like it was their own son who got married. With so many eyes on her, the confident venerable Mei also became shy and blushed profusely. Her heart was racing non-stop. "Come on, brothers. Move aside. I have to hurry and bring Third Master and wife to meet Marshall now. Marshall must have waited for very long. It's been a decade since Marshall last saw his son. Him being here with his wife is great news for all of us," said Wang Meng, with his face flushed in excitement and his arms raised. Even though Jun Mo Xie already passed on 10 years ago, when this bunch of soldiers brought up his name, they still used words such as meet instead of paying respect to him. Those words were not for them. They were meant for people that were not close to their hearts. To them, their Marshall would never die. He was still alive. The camp tent and the flag, everything reminded them of him. Jun Mo Xie. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 602. Tian Guan Lin. Cries of the Men. This is so that Grandmaster will not worry. Big brother Wang Meng needs to take care of the third son and his wife. Hurry, go up. Otherwise, once he gets angry, the brothers would beat you up together. The masses shouted. The people who were scattered all over the place a moment ago, within moments, already lined up neatly into 2 rows. Then, they observed Jun Mo Xie and Mei Shuayan slowly pass through them. In their eyes, they were all looking at their own children. Jun Mo Xie waved as he walked past. After he walked a long distance, he turned around and realized that close to 100 of them were still admiring his silhouette, not moving. It's as though they were looking at their most respected, most admired person from then, the White Robe Army generals. Jun Mo Xie's heart softened. He took a deep breath, trying to contain his emotions. But it turned out to be so touching that he could not hold back his tears anymore. Tears started dripping down his face. Wang Meng followed by his side, face full of happiness, as though he had done something really noble. Throughout the walk, he introduced Jun Mo Xie to every single person. Even the scars on his face seemed overjoyed as well. "My son, look over here. I led the soldiers over to Tian Guanling then. This place is the very place the first moment I got down the horse. There were a few stones lying around here. Then, I stood on the biggest rock, turned around and saw my brother's teams walking over majestically. At that time, I was only a small trooper in a small team. I followed my leader by his side, and to this day, I could still clearly remember what my leader said at that point in time. Here is a good location for a camp." Wang Meng finished his last sentence. He stabilized his voice. as though trying to imitate how Jun Mo Xie said with his strong and affirming voice. His looked serious. Jun Mo Xie looked towards his direction and could see a big rock lying on the ground, square and flat. The many edges and corners around it had actually rounded off. These guards must have polished it all the while for the past 10 years, to the point where this ordinary rock had unknowingly completed its polishing process. When I came here then, Grandmaster seemed to have a heavy heart. He once stood atop that stone wall over there for a very long time, with a long face. He did not say a single word. Only after some long time, that he spoke. He made a poem. His brothers then carved on the stone wall. Wang Meng's eyes became to turn red. For I, a barbarian, even though I do not know what the poem meant, but for every single day that I walk past here, I would read it once. Jun Mo Xie slowly stepped forward, before coming to the stone wall. There were 4 rows of words carved on the surface. The characters were the same as those at the foot of the mountain. The smoke spreads across the flag. Thousands of cavalry army. When the battlefield finally becomes, no longer any men will ever turn sorrow. My father had actually got tired of killing long ago. Jun Mo Xie looked at the stone wall silently. He could not help but recall his third uncle Jun Mo Xie's story that he told him. It was Jun Mo Xie's "No men will be sorrow." When the knife soldiers recognized the desert, no longer any men will ever turn sorrow. These 2 phrases fully expressed Jun Mo Xie's stature as a gold of soldiers, white-robed general. Buried inside his heart was his hate for war, and also his blessings for his brothers. The terrain was getting steeper and steeper. They climbed the mountain step by step. After walking about halfway through, the road on the mountainside got even narrower. At the very most, only 4 or 5 people could walk side by side. One side was like a knife-cut cliff, cutting straight into the sky. The other side was not a very high cliff, and below that side of the cliff was clear white snow, smooth as a mirror. A flat plain field. Below us is a big lake, but it is covered with heavy snow now. When it is summer, it is sparkling and beautiful. Wang Meng had some proud self-introductions. I could remember the time where we were stationed here. After 3 days, Grandmaster came here and admired the lake for almost half a day. He drew his saber and carved the poem on that stone wall. Jun Mo Xie had already noticed that there was another smoother surface on the cliff in front of it. There were a number of lines carved on the surface, and they were full of words, but naturally brought about a similar emotion. Long hated the person that I am, who owns the gardens in my dreams. Why solve the problem of the mountains? Row amidst the 5 lakes. After reading these 4 lines, it seemed as though he had seen 100 war general wearing a robe, looking at the lake in front of them indefinitely. He seemed to plan to retire, and even looked forward to living a peaceful and happy life after retiring. Jun Mo Xie took a deep breath of cold air. Suddenly a burst of anger poured into his heart. Father had actually long hated this life full of war, fighting for power, and already had plans to retire. He would never have threatened the emperor's position. But Tian was still afraid of his great skills adorned in that gold robe. Welly afraid of exposing themselves to threat and inviting self-destruction. They used despicable means to harm him. Jun Mo Xie suddenly felt an inexplicable anger. In front of us is the Grandmaster's saint. Wang Meng was leading the way. He went to inspect 7 to 8 sentry posts. And the moment the sentry veterans heard that the Grandmaster's son was coming to worship them, they were touched to tears. After finally climbing up the mountainside, this was the real Tian Guanling. In front of Jun Mo Xie was a magnificent military camp. The sound of the wind blowing had a tinge of urgency in it. Jun Mo Xie's flag stood tall and fluttered in the wind. The bright red flag was like a burning cloud dancing in the air. He was someone who was full of desire and greed in the world. 8 military battalions surrounded the saint at every corner, on the lookout for each other, akin to stars revolving around the moon. They tightly secured and protected the saint. Troops of soldiers clad in bright armor were patrolling the area vigilantly, walking back and forth. As one group went past, another would come over. The patrol teams were coming and going. There was no gap at all. At this moment, a person dressed in general costume walked out of the saint. He had thick eyebrows and was more than 7 feet tall. He was exceptionally tall and sturdy, that wherever he stood, it would seem as though a tower stood there. He realized that the general was looking over, shouting, "Wang Meng! I allowed you to lead your men to clear the snow off the roads, yet you're goofing off and actually returned? Are you guilty or not?" Wang Meng got a shock. He arranged his feet in a proper manner, and shouted, reporting to General Wu, "The Grandmaster's third son is here to worship the Grandmaster. I was just doing my duty, and not deliberately disregarding my soldier duties." The Grandmaster's third son? Jun Mo Xie? General Wu's face suddenly changed. His vision turned towards Jun Mo Xie, squinting his eyes. Jun Mo Xie had already known that Wu Yongjun was father's guard, and was, in fact, a brave, tiger-like general. The moment he saw him, he was utterly impressed. But as he was about to go forward to pay his respects, Wu Yongjun suddenly glared at him and angrily said, "So you're Jun Mo Xie? Why have you only come now? Where have you gone to these years?" General Wu unexpectedly gave him a reprimand, along with a series of scoldings. Afterwards, Wu Yongjun's eyes suddenly turned red. He squinted his eyes and tried to control his emotions. A few drops of tears leaked out. His voice was still hoarse. He yelled, "You bastard! As Grandmaster's one and only flesh and blood, you did not even come back to worship for a full 10 years. Jun Mo Xie, you rascal! Grandmaster was alone all these while. So lonely. Did you know how much he would have missed you? You this disappointing thing." He failed to finish his sentence. He could not help but start to whimper. Jun Mo Xie kept silent and did not say a word. He did not know how to respond to General Wu's berating. Wu Yongjun's loud voice made him extremely embarrassed. A lot of people started coming out from the surrounding camps to take a look. The moment they heard that it was the Grandmaster's son, they rushed out. The scene started getting messy. "You bastard! Hurry, go see your father. What are you stoning here for? You unfilial thing!" Wu Yongjun screamed into the skies. But after screaming, he could not help but to rub his eyes. His eyes turned fully red soon after. Something appeared to be stuck inside his throat, clogging it. He snorted a few times and coughed a little, seemingly crying. He separated from the crowd. He covered his face as he ran hurriedly into the saint. Crying sounds could be heard coming from within, similar to the depressing cries of a bull burying itself in the blankets. "Grandmaster, your son has finally come to see you. I have scolded him. But he has still eventually come to see you. He has grown so much like you, so handsome, and even brought a beautiful wife along. I'm sure you would like her." Under everyone's urge, Jun Mo Xie and Mei Shuayan entered the saint. Everyone stood orderly outside the saint, face filled with sorrow and joy. Their smiles were full of tears. silently watching the saint, giving Jun Mo Xie and Mei Shuayan some privacy and space. Afterward, they faced the saint and kneeled in an orderly manner. Everyone breathed quietly. Congratulations, Grandmaster. You have a successor. God bless the Jun family. The descendant is not alone. They were so sincere. It seemed that they were wholeheartedly blessing them. Jun Mo Xie entered and was immediately shocked. Inside the saint, it was just the wartime headquarters, orderly arranged. On each side were 8 chairs, and unsheathed swords were behind the chairs. And in front was a bookshelf. Above, an ivory bucket. Inside were 10 military orders neatly arranged. On the table was an achievement record book, and on the other side, a cold sword neatly laid out. One person covered in a white robe was sitting on the seat in front, his body tilted sideways, sitting there, his right hand on the tabletop, his index finger gently curled up, seemingly tapping the tabletop. His left hand was gently raised, placed on his chest. His had a noble expression. His eyes did not appear angry, but rather full of might. There was a wrinkle between his eyebrows, looking as if he was thinking about something, in deep thoughts. There was a kind of depressed feel about it. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 603. Military spirit forever here. Everything was as though it was real people. However, looking closely, the one in the middle was a piece of sculpted jade which looked extremely real, with a lot of details. Even the tiniest creases on the clothing were detailedly sculpted, and the skin folds on the skin and face were extremely lifelike. It was obvious that the person who sculpted this jade had put in a lot of effort and hard work. Somehow this statue seemed to have a soul. Behind it, there was 3 words on the left: no hero ever regrets. There was another 4 words on its right: the world is mine. Right above it was a sign with inscripted words: all succumb. This was Jun Mo Xie, the white gown general. How impressive. Mei Shuayan unconsciously admired Jun Mo Xie's statue with envy, then lowly said, "Mo Xie, you and your father look exactly alike." "My father? He is also yours." Jun Mo Xie looked at her for a while, seemed slightly distracted, and firmly said, "Shuayan, come kneel and kowtow to father. In this lifetime, you will definitely be Jun family's daughter-in-law. You can't run away from it. With his son and daughter-in-law both here to share the good news, my father would sure be happy." Mei Shuayan blushed, shyly yet gladly acknowledged his word and knelt down respectfully beside Jun Mo Xie. Jun Mo Xie respectfully lighted 13 joss sticks and quietly whispered, "Dad, it has been a decade since we were separated. Your son has now brought your daughter-in-law to see you. I hope you can see us and feel less troubled. I will take your revenge for you. Whether it is the silver city of wind and snow or the country of Tianxiang, so long as they had hurt you, they will have to pay a painful price. This is your son, Jun Mo Xie's promise. In your witness. May the sky and earth be my witness." Each word of his vow was enunciated with determination. At that moment, Jun Mo Xie's heart felt exceptionally heavy as he kowtowed. Although he may be proud and arrogant, he had sincere respect from the bottom of his heart for this white gown general, Jun Mo Xie. As just from the countless tales, he already understood what he was like. Furthermore, the merging of their souls made Jun Mo Xie clearly feel that Jun Mo Xie was his father. He had never kneeled before anyone since birth, but at that moment, he was more than willing. For such a hero, Even if he was not his father, he still deserved a sincere bow. Furthermore, there was an undeniable kinship. Although his soul came from another world, this physical body undeniably had Jun Mo Xie's blood running through. People reincarnate, and at most, he coincidentally brought his memory along during reincarnation. If he had not, would his heart have continued to repel it? That was unimaginable. Just as Jun Mo Xie and Mei Shuayan kneeled down, strong winds started blowing above Tian Guan Lin. The countless clouds in the sky started moving aggressively, and the snow on the ground was swept up into the sky, suspended in the air, covering the sky and blurred the surroundings. All the big flags simultaneously blew open, and what was more alarming was that the initial northern wind suddenly weirdly changed to a southern wind. Hence, the flags were blew open facing the north. That was in the direction of Tianxiang's capital. Great leader. Suddenly everyone outside neatly kneeled down with tears in their eyes, yelled at the sky until their voices almost tore. Thanks to our great leader, the soul has returned. As they kowtowed and teared, the wind continued to roar in the sky, howling and blowing, as though it was responding to the rest. After a long while, Jun Mo Xie and Mei Shuayan slowly walked out. Across, everyone's eyes turned and fixed on them, especially their knees and forehead. Then everyone laughed in comfort. There was an eye-catching stain on Jun Mo Xie's knees and fade ashes on his forehead. It was the same for Mei Shuayan. This was a result of these soldiers' calculative thinking. They were afraid that people might pretend to pay respects to their great leader and not kowtow to him, insulting and disrespecting their great leader, so they scattered some ashes on the ground. Afterwards, this bunch of rough men respectfully yet adorably hugged together. Mo Xie, you are finally here. Mo Xie. Huh. You are all grown up and have even found a wife. Your uncles here don't have much to offer, so we all prepared a small gift each. Hopefully you will like it. Mo Xie. In the future, come more often. The great leader anticipates to see you. You didn't notice how happy the great leader was until his soul came back. The man who spoke started sobbing before he finished. Why are you crying? It is a happy day that third young master brought his wife to see the great leader. You are such a sissy to cry like you are mourning. Are you even a man? The man was reprimanding others, but his own eyes had turned red too. I am happy. I am really happy. The great leader finally have descendants. And today, we got to see his daughter-in-law. I'm sure he will have grandchildren soon. I am being happy for the great leader, happy. A man broke out in tears, crying loudly, as he sat on the floor and kowtowed, proclaiming, I miss the days we followed the great leader. Seeing how third young master looks exactly like the great leader, I'm happy yet my heart aches. These simple yet sincere words made everyone quieten down, leaving their tears to roll, leaving traces on their faces. Each of their minds wandered into memories from a long time ago, their eyes emitting vicissitude, as though they returned to the days when they fought alongside Jun Mo Xie in bloody battles in deserts. Jun Mo Xie stayed in Tian Guan Lin for a day and a night, and left on the third day's morning. This bunch of welcoming guards made Jun Mo Xie, such a cold-hearted person, feel warmth. Jun Mo Xie could feel that these people really treated him well from the bottom of their hearts and treated him as though he was their most doted-on son or nephew, as though they wanted to take out their hearts as a gift for him. This was definitely not an act. Such sincerity could not be an act. The two of them slowly made their way down the mountain as countless of others followed behind them to send them off. Their faces were filled with tear trails, but yet, everyone were smiling from comfort. Until they walked a distance, then they heard occasional hollers. Third young master. Come back when you are free. This is also your home. We will wait for you to return. Bring your son too. The great leader will miss you too. Mei Shuayan wiped the corner of her reddened eyes and said nasally. Who said that only beasts were capable of true emotions? Aren't these people capable too? How adorable. How sincere. Your father is so impressive to have such true brothers even after death. Jun Mo Xie took a deep breath and sighed. Yes. It is not easy to achieve this. I may not be able to do it too. As he recollected his conversation with the guards the previous night. Initially, Tian Guanlin was a competitive ground for militaries, but since the great leader built pitched camp here, no matter which country's generals come, they will make a detour. And even if they don't, they only came to pay their respects. No one dared to be offensive. We will never leave here. We will keep protection the great leader. If we leave, the great leader will be lonely. The great leader is used to having thousands of soldiers and horses around him. Once it becomes quiet, we are afraid he will not be accustomed to it. When Jun Mo Xie suggested to help them and their families relocate, Soldier Wu and the rest all said, we not only want to keep the great leader company forever. Even our sons, our grandsons, they will definitely stay here too. The Wu Hui military flag is our greatest pride. So long this flag is around, everyone will still have a meaning to live, and can find meaning in life. We are self-sufficient. We farm here. Contented and enjoying ourselves. We don't need much money. Third young master. It would be better if you take the money with you and use it to do things for the Jun family. Soldier Wu and the rest rejected as Jun Mo Xie was about to leave some money for them. Please come back often to take a look, you must treat madam. Third young master. From now on, the Jun family depends on you. Please don't embarrass the great leader. Your father is a hero and good man. You cannot tarnish his lifelong reputation. Jun Mo Xie unconsciously had walked far off while deep in thoughts. Mei Shuayan knew that he was feeling down, so she quietly followed him, not saying anything, giving him time to adjust his feelings. After a while, Jun Mo Xie silently turned around to take a look and realized they were already quite far from Tian Guanlin, but based on his eyesight, he noticed that there were still some people standing on the mountain, waving at them. I will definitely be back. Definitely. I won't let all of your sacrifices down. I will definitely do you guys proud. See you soon. Jun Mo Xie swore quietly in his heart. When he turned his head back, he was looking a lot better. He and Mei Shuayan looked at each other, telepathically understood each other, used their leg strength and transformed into two white streams of light. In an instant, they flew across the empty ground and disappeared after turning at a corner. Behind them, Tian Guanlin became solemn, quiet and dignified. While traveling, Jun Mo Xie suddenly frowned and Mei Shuayan simultaneously looked at him. The both of them immediately understood each other's eyes. There was a strong enemy hidden in front of them. And there was many of them. This was barely 10 miles away from Tian Guanlin, but yet, it is a not too big nor too small valley, surrounded by mountains. The two of them stood firm and as usual, Mei Shuayan spoke first, and coldly said, is it friends from the three holy lands? Since you are here, show yourselves. What point is there to keep hiding? Ha ha ha. A long, clear laughter was heard and a flash of purple ray appeared. Zi Jinghong appeared casually and beside him was a well-dressed Xiao Wei Cheng. The surroundings was filled with the sound of clothing breaking airflows, and 40 to 50 people appeared at the same time, surrounding the two of them in the center. When they were in Tian Guan Lin, Jun Mo Xie heard that two oddly dressed men went to pay their respects the past few days, and based on their description, he immediately thought of Zi Jinghong and Xiao Weicheng. So he was not surprised when he saw them, and in fact, it would be weird if they did not encounter the two of them there. As they did not attack them in Tian Guan Lin, Jun Mo Xie was somewhat less upset. However, it was separate from the situation they were in. Venerable Mei, it has been a while since we met. You still look as good. How great is that? Zi Jinghong said as his robe flew in the air while he stood on the snow, in the wind, looking chic. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 604. So, how did I scold you? Xiao Weicheng. You again. Sure enough, you're still as greedy as ever. Mei Shuayan's eyes flashed. She said coldly. Xiao Zhongzhu. If we do battle again today and join hands to kill everyone, it seems like we are bound to win today. I wonder if we should have decided how to split the bounty. Xiao Weicheng was skeptical. He asked. Venerable Mei has made a huge mistake. Today's meeting at the Great Golden City is invitation only. The person in charge today isn't Xiao Mao. It's someone else. Zi Jinghong laughed. He floated 2 steps in front and responded. Had Venerable Mei probably mistaken something? The 3 Holy Lands took over tens of thousands of years to attain its fame and did it without having any comrades. Or maybe he did it with some help of his comrades. Tian Fa's contributions to the heavenly battle is greatly evident. All we have is respect for Venerable Mei. Nothing else. And today, it's just a desire to be able to compare our skills with Venerable Mei, to improve our skills and prepare for the heavenly battle that's coming soon. There's no need to be that hostile. Zi Jinghong. I have once despised you. You didn't even bat an eye when you said those words. I have to tell you that I'm utterly impressed. Mei Shuayan's smile stretched across her face. She's seen some thick-skinned people, but none as thick as those of Zi Jinghong's to lie so blatantly. He even sounded so dignified, as though it was the most appropriate thing to say. Venerable Mei, you've praised too much. If I, Zi Jinghong, a nobody, want to deal with you, there are many good locations to choose to do it. Why did you choose this place? Zi Jinghong pouted. For example, Tian Guan Lin. Ha! Wouldn't that make a nice ambushing location? There are 3,000 overguards and their wives and children there too. If we were to kill you there, Venerable Mei would certainly worry. It is my best place to lie in wait to ambush. But I would rather give up than to battle at Tian Guan Lin. I believe that I have already given you enough face. Jun Mo Xie took heavy steps forward and spoke. Zi Jinghong. You too didn't choose to kill me at Tian Guan Lin. I'm touched. Even though I am standing before my grave. A murderer is ultimately a threat to the human world. But I still have to thank you. But, Zi Jinghong, you have to understand this. That no matter where you decide to attack me, a rival is still a rival. This will never change. You proved you still had some conscience in you by deciding not to kill me at Tian Guan Lin. But that doesn't mean you would be merciful with me today. He sneered. Zi Jinghong. A person who hides will conceal what he does not know too. Just ask yourself honestly. Even at this point, even if it's at this location, would you still give me mercy? We have already scratched so far beyond the surface. Why are we still playing such pretense acts? Just do it cleanly. Zi Jinghong got serious. He fixated his eyes on Jun Mo Xie and replied, Jun Mo Xie, I admit that I really do respect your father. But this does not mean that I would forgive such impudence. You're not qualified at all to say such words to me. I agree. Jun Mo Xie laughed. Actually, I shouldn't be talking to you about such crap. But you've once climbed the mountain to give respects to my father. And even gave my brothers tons of silvers. To think that such a despicable person like you would actually have some conscience. Which is why I said what I said. Since you failed to appreciate my kindness, why should I waste my time to ridicule myself and my pride? Let's cut straight to the point. In my eyes, the three holy cities are not only unqualified, but nothing about it is even good. What's more, Zi Jinghong, you have to understand this. Jun Mo Xie lifted one finger and gently wavered, ridiculing him. You think too highly of yourself. You're a third master, not the master. So next time when you address yourself, please say, I, third master, and never say, I, master. This would create some misunderstanding. I'm reminding you because I'm feeling good today. Who would know that you may cause some trouble next time because of that misunderstanding? I'm pretty kind, right? Why don't you thank me? Zi Jinghong was fuming, and fire sparked in his eyes. Jun Mo Xie's sarcasm was too much to handle. Despicable. Jun Mo Xie. What are you? How dare you say such words to me? Don't think that you're all that big simply because you have some support. How about you kneel before me and admit your mistakes? We can spare your measly life. Or else I would send you to visit your dead father and allow both of you to reunite, a scrawny bald person shouted with a rather piercing voice. His face was a little bruised. It was Guan who was reporting to Zi Jinghong that day. Guan glared at Jun Mo Xie as he said those words. His eyes were flickering between a state of total desire to none at all, as he looked at Jun Mo Xie and Mei Shuayan. His long tongue unknowingly extended out, making slithering sounds like a snake as he licked his lips. He finished his sentence and looked toward Zi Jinghong as he cupped his fist with his other hand, honoring his respects to him. Third son, I have a personal request which I'd hope you would accept. Guan, what humble request do you have? Tell me. Zi Jinghong twitched his eyebrows. He was personally rather skeptical of him, but since he was against Jun Mo Xie as well, he figured that he could take this chance to act like a hero. Especially when Zi Jinghong saw that very sly tongue of his sticking out. Third son also knows this urge of his subordinate. I have been craving for some good food and Venerable Mei is waiting for me to kill him. Who cares about whatever Xian pill that is? I wouldn't dare to expect too much either. But by killing him you would grant my wish. Such smooth skin and tender flesh. It has to be delicious. Guan spoke seriously. But upon saying this, everyone started giving him weird gazes. Zi Jinghong vomited in a split second, as though he couldn't help but throw up right at his face. However, after thinking about it, this rhetoric was a great opportunity to fight against Venerable Mei. He tried to forcibly resist it and even squeezed out a smile. This request is fine. I have decided. If we can actually kill him, and if you have contributed greatly to the kill, you can have her body. You're such a cannibal to be eating humans. This revenge will not be sweet. The two of them were not exactly very discreet with what their exchange of words. Everyone could hear them very clearly. Mei Shuayan initially could not understand what was happening, but after looking at Guan whose drool had already formed a pool on the floor, her face turned white. Even though she was a Xian beast, she had been living honestly all the while. Ever since she was born, she had been eating fruits and vegetables as her diet. How could she have known how to eat human flesh? Upon hearing what Zi Jinghong had said, she was fuming mad. Jun Mo Xie was seething with anger. She looked towards him. What the feck? Where did this human-looking ghost-looking trash come from? Jun Mo Xie looked towards Gobu Huan, startled. Who didn't tighten his pants? How on earth did you sneak in? Just look at you. Bald head. You really look like some trash. There's even a hoop in the middle. No wonder whatever that comes out of your mouth is full of filth. Gobu Huan was stunned. He has yet to understand the chain of scoldings that Jun Mo Xie was spurting out. He pondered through several times over what Jun Mo Xie said before he could finally understand it. Those behind who already knew what he meant could not help but laughed. You have to admit, what Jun Mo Xie exemplified was pretty true. Gobu Huan had a slender figure. His totally bald and round head could reflect light off it. There were some loose strands of hair though, but its condition was not very good. It was somewhat curled. The two of them from very different lands originally were not close to Gobu Huan. It was just so most of the time. But today, Jun Mo Xie actually said such words. People there, who were all veterans other than Mei Shuayan, began to find it interesting. They tried hard to control themselves, but some of them eventually burst out laughing. Only Mei Shuayan opened up her big eyes to stare suspiciously. She first looked at Jun Mo Xie, then looked at the crowd of masters opposite them. She could not understand what Jun Mo Xie was saying and what they were laughing about. Gobu Huan could not but turned red in the face. He was extremely angry. He opened his eyes wide and shouted at the top of his lungs, Jun Mo Xie! How dare you scold me? Scold you? When did I scold you? You're such a weird dude. Jun Mo Xie was flabbergasted. He touched his head as though he was trying to understand him. He responded. In that case, tell me, how did I scold you? What did I scold you? Did I even spurt out a single filthy word? What are you? People in this world are greedy for money and property, but there are actually people greedy for scoldings? Gobu Huan stamped with fury. His nose was almost emitting fumes. He shouted. You're still denying that you scolded me? You're actually trying to deny what you said in front of so many people. Jun Mo Xie. You're such a despicable person. I won't forgive you. Oh silly. I'm so silly. Jun Mo Xie pulled an innocent and muddled face. Even if you want to kill me you need a reason, right? Even if it's a groundless accusation, you still have to try to prove it, right? You can't just claim that I scolded you with that big mouth of yours. There's something wrong with you. I have seen some people asking for trouble and some courting for death. But it's my first time seeing people like you who want me to scold you. You're still talking rubbish. You clearly said that I was a chicken. Gobu Huan was through the roof. But as he said it he stopped. He could not finish what he said. He became awkward. Chicken? What part of chicken did I scold you? Ridiculous. Jun Mo Xie was trying to make some sense. I plead you. Please don't cut off your speech. This would turn people into chickens. I mean, turn people curious to death. I want to kill you. Ah. Gobu Huan spurted out. He pranced onto Jun Mo Xie with absurd anger. He had fallen for his trap. If he was not careful, he would have scolded his own self. But the situation had turned out this way, and everyone behind was rolling on the floor laughing. The people behind were veterans. How would they not understand what chicken meant? even though Gobu Huan was not very good in dealing with people usually. But it was never to the point where he hated anyone so much. But today's incident proved otherwise. People seemed to look at him like how vultures looked at their prey. It was a disgusting feeling that could not be described easily. People no longer wanted to walk beside him, not eat with him. He had to eat alone. Others were eating in the hall, and he had to have his meal in his own room. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 605. A well-stamped fingerprint. If Gobu Huan did not go in by himself, he would have met with disagreements from the ground. This rascal had already suffered a few punches in the past few days and was feeling unhappy about it, especially when he did not know what he did that had completely offended everyone. Feck. I was forced to eat human flesh back then and did not want to do it either. If not, would you rather I starve to death? But later on, I thought that human flesh really tasted special and was quite delicious. So Who wouldn't eat delicious food? Everyone had their own food preferences. Carrot lovers or vegetable lovers. You could not control the taste buds of people. Jun Mo Xie dodged off and sprinted off. He defended himself as he ran. I did not mean to scold you, but I'm saying the truth. If you don't believe me, you can go back and look into the mirror. You really look like it. Didn't you see that I almost pulled down my pants to see if I had lost my crotch? If that thing suddenly popped out and spouted a stream of empty rhetoric, then I would have lost my face. Luckily, it isn't me. Gobu Huan got too angry that he was shouting hysterically. He was boiling with rage. His anger had reached its peak and was he unable to control. His thin hair was curling up and flowing. This was quite a good representation of him bristling with anger. Although his hair seemed a little thin and slightly curly. This was quite an image. Gobu Huan was still jumping around and chasing after Jun Mo Xie, looking like a giant monkey. Jun Mo Xie was running off in shame. He suddenly looked back and was momentarily shocked and shouted loudly. Wow! With the curls on your hair flowing, you looked even more like it. Can you not be so alike as the image? At the moment, Gobu Huan was obviously mad with anger. He felt that his lungs were exploding and was growling and roaring, screaming and shouting loudly. He was showing his skills recklessly, making a wrong move by placing both fists wrongly. A fierce wind, like a whirlwind, was blowing in with great intensity towards Jun Mo Xie. Jun Mo Xie shouted loudly in panic. With a dodge, he suddenly disappeared. Gobu Huan's eyes reddened as he was madly bombarding. No doubt he was an expert. The level of a supreme. The big pile of snow that surrounded was broken up into snowflakes and even the floor was rolled over. Snowflakes were falling from the sky and soil from the ground was everywhere. His influence was really appalling. At this moment, the top of his head suddenly hurts. He was appalled, and his face went colorless. He quickly leapt forward and when he looked back, he realized Jun Mo Xie was at his back. Realized that he had turned his head, Jun Mo Xie shouted. Oh my God! And he turned his back and run. How will Gobu Huan be willing to let him off? He weirdly howled as he approached him. As he chased and escaped, it seemed to have returned to when they both had confronted, right at the middle of their original position. Suddenly, Jun Mo Xie stopped running away. He retreated in order to gain advantage to advance later on. He rushed off and in a split second, he was in front of Gobu Huan. His bodily movements were fast to a maximum. Gobu Huan was rushing and chasing with all his might. But Jun Mo Xie was in front of him all of a sudden, and he was taken aback momentarily, almost gasping in shock. It was immediate and a surprise. He thought to himself, "You rascal is finding your own death." With his palms together, he gave a sinister laugh. At this time, his legs weakened at a sudden. It seemed like there was a trap at the bottom, a sense of danger. He was instantly shocked. He gathered the energy and sprinted. But as soon as his legs left the floor, Jun Mo Xie was already targeting his lower part of the body and running towards it. He gave 4 kicks on his lower leg's joints continuously and was even able to seize the opportunity to switch his tactic. With his right toe at his ankle, he tripped him off aggressively. Guan shouted loudly and went straight forward, like a wooden pile. The moment before he rushed forward and exhausted his energy, the snow pile on the floor was unusually smooth. It seemed like he was boarding the escalator instantly and was gliding towards his own territory. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, a rascal could not help but burst out laughing, clutching his stomach. He laughed with tears in his eyes. Right hand clutching his stomach. Left hand wobbled as he pointed at Guan, who was gliding towards him at high speed. He was laughing so much that he was almost out of breath. The public could not help but to burst out laughing as well. The few commoners who were not on very good terms with Guan were laughing so hard that they were squatting on the floor and was slamming the floor hard with their hands, causing cramps throughout the body. They did not possess a single look of Supreme Expert's magnanimity. Even leaders such as Zi Jinghong and Xiao Wei Cheng could not help but laughed out loud at such situations. His shoulders shivered and his whole body cramped up. They had lost the composure to be stern and calm. That was because what was happening at the moment, before their very eyes, was too hilarious. Guan was seen lying flat on the snow-piled floor and gliding towards, making effort to lift up his head. On his bald and shiny head was wool-like thin and curly hair that was neatly flowing. It was not sure why there was an additional red-marked fingerprint on his circle-shaped head. His scalp was originally white, and the handprint was made more obvious. It was like a cinnabar mole that was stuck on top. The public then recalled Jun Mo Xie's metaphor previously, and they were overwhelmed with joy. This was portrayed even more realistic now. Actually, Jun Mo Xie had already stamped a fingerprint on his head at a random time and the position was unusually narrow. The fingerprint was done really well. Jun Mo Xie was shocked when he saw it. Surprise. It was definitely a surprise. The gods can prove that young Master Jun had really not intended it to be. He had wanted to use a little bit more strength to stamp that fingerprint such that the rascal would die from it. He had not known that this fellow was rather instinctive to sense danger and he pounced on him desperately when he sensed something was on his head. Young Master Jun was not able to react in time to launch an attack, and was only able to leave a rather clear and dubious red fingerprint. If the fingerprint was stamped on any other person's head, it would not be such big a matter. It was merely a fingerprint. What else would there be? Since there was a large number of people who had drops from hair. But to be stamped on Guan's bald head at the moment, this would imply that the drop from the hair was stretched too far and it was up to one's imagination. Inside the depression, on the snow-piled floor, the laughter was filling the air. Those who did not know would not have expected the place to have a life-and-death killing but would have thought a celebration party was being held. How much laughter and joy were there! This show was definitely exciting. Guan, who did not know the concrete details of what had happened, leapt out from the snow-piled floor, and his face was mad with fury. He had thought that the bunch of people were laughing at his embarrassing fall. His face flushed red with anger and his neck stiffened, defending himself loudly. "What are you laughing at? Success and failure are common. old fellow like me had not yet been defeated, only merely fell due to carelessness. Jun Mo Xie. Come and battle if you have the guts. Using the traditional way of the 300-round battle. As he was saying, he was sticking out his long and thin tongue, a habit of his, and was licking up and down his lips. The laughter from the surrounding was even louder momentarily. Everyone was staring intently at his bald head and was surveying with interest. There were a few who even spread out their legs and glanced at their own crotch without realizing. Their laughter then became even more creepy. From far, there was a shadow of a figure coming towards at high speed. He was soon passing this place from 10 or more miles away but was attracted by the sound of laughter. The person wore a snow-white shirt which was no different from the color of snow, impressively. His body was drifting and in a split second, there was not a single trace left. To conclude based on the speed shown, it may not be that the person was showing off the mastery of yin-yang escape to Jun Mo Xie. The skill appeared mysterious, appearing and disappearing creepily. It seemed like he was on the left, but he was actually on the right. He was taking care of his front and back and being extremely cautious. Compared to Jun Mo Xie's martial arts, there was seemingly an air of strangeness. There was a piece of white cloth covering the person's face and his face could not be seen. But merely judging based on his hair color, he could be around 40 to 50 years old. Hearing the unexpected laughter, the person quickly turned around and stopped in the air for a split, almost 1/10 of a second, and disappeared. The next moment he appeared, he had already went ahead 10 or more miles into the air, lying behind a piece of rock at a corner high up, without any sound. Just like a large and light piece of snowflake, he was stuck on the big piece of rock without any sound and blended with it. There were experts from the 3 holy lands below, 50 to 60 of them. Not a single one of them was a loafer. But among the many experts, no one could detect that there was an additional passerby in the wild jungle. Although no one from the 3 holy lands could detect, that did not mean that there was really no one who was aware. At least there were 2 of them who were sharp to realize the odd situation, Jun Mo Xie and Mei Shuayan. After Jun Mo Xie was besieged by the army from the 2 big holy lands, he had long ago, quick to launch the exquisite Hong Jun Pagoda's knowledge. The exquisite Hong Jun Pagoda's knowledge was really strong and detailed. Within such wide and vast land, many things have been witnessed and seen. If there was any living being we had left out, even any corners that had just seen a fallen piece of snowflakes, a cockroach that had just scurried by, it could be felt and seen clearly. This had already surpassed any type of superhuman capabilities, and it was not a matter of one's level of capability. And Mei Shuayan had already attained the level of practice as a venerable personally and had divinely viewed herself as a sensitive superhero. Even more so that just before the big battle, she had already used all her concentration. Although the person's martial arts skill was extraordinary, with a profound understanding in Xian Gong, but he was still unable to surpass the level of Shui Mei Yen. How did one escape from legendary beauty Mei's wholehearted search? At that moment when they discovered who the person was, Jun Mo Xie and Mei Shuayan looked at each other and darted a glance, conversing secretly using their own telepathic language. There is someone here. He had a wise ability, but would he be a foe or a friend? Jun Mo Xie said. This person right here. His ability is definitely not weak, and his martial arts appeared to be wise, maybe of a lower level than 2 of us. At the moment, he is still observing and did not show his face. His intention was not any obvious and was hard to guess. There may be a possibility that it is an ambush set by the 3 holy lands. Shui Mei Yen was giving a serious consideration about it. I do not think so. If it was really an ambush by the 3 holy lands, How could they only send one person? And even more so when he was here. He chose to be invisible and hide in concealment. Looking from this way, this seems rather interesting. Jun Mo Xie's eyes were filled with a strange joy. So, I would say that the person was not a friend. But neither a foe? Shui Mei Yan's eyes lit. Play by ear. The person right here. His ability is not weak. And his martial arts skill was wittingly extraordinary. If it was at the most critical moment, might as well drag the rascal down for a few rounds of threading the muddy water. You have to know there are less than a handful who have such a level of martial arts skills in this world. Jun Mo Xie had an evil laughter and Mei Shui Yan cannot help but to roll her eyes at him. At somewhere a distance away, behind a rock, that person quietly looked out. When he looked down, he stared hard. Looking from his veil, his mouth formed an unexpectedly round shape. Then, he was even more meticulous as he curved in and went back to hiding. His forehead was already trickling with beads of sweat. He could only feel his mind drifting away. He was almost dizzy. What the hell? He was actually an expert from the group who belongs to the Three Lands. And was among the many who trained with the army. My God! Could it be possible that he is an old master that is setting an ambush here? Who did old master had a feud with? Why are the rascals from Great Golden City all looking for old master like mad men? After they found him, there would be a big battle ahead. They seemed like they had a death feud with old master, comparable to seeking a revenge for killing a father or stealing a wife. What on earth is happening? Someone for God's sake please explain to me. Which deserted world was old master hidden in? When will this finish? Is this intended to trick him to death? Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 606. The depressing story of a Scapegoat Supreme. If they had really wanted old master to die, then they should have at least let me know why they were doing this. To get pulled out without any clear understanding and then, continuously being on the run and getting chased by killers, scaring to death for a few times every day. This caused old master to wait for winter in order to get into this deserted and deep mountain in desperation, and was actually able to meet so many. I am an easy feat. Me. My God. Who had I offended? There was not only Great Golden City, but Fantasy Blood Sea was here too. And there were so many of them. At least 40 and more. Did they had to do this? Could the leader be possibly Xi Jinghong? At this point, this white shirt person was furiously scolding inside. My God. They thought too highly of me. Employing more than 40 people at once, and the lowest level was a supreme expert. Among them there were so many supreme level and above. An old master. Myself. Even though I was a supreme killer. But I would not be able to fight against so many people. What was the issue here? Or was it that these experts from the Three Holy Lands were idiots? They were so generous with their money that they just gave them away. While old master was on the run, he had already met possibly a 100 of them. If old master had not successfully breakthrough recently, and mastered the skills of being on the run, it was afraid that he might be already lying on the floor dead, counting earthworms. Although he was feeling indignant inside, he did not dare to show any traces of emotions on his face. He did not even dare to breathe in loudly. He was extremely vexed internally and had wanted to give a few harsh slaps on his mouth. Chu Li Hun. Chu Li Hun. You rascal was your generation's king of killer at any rate. Having real-world experience. Why did you still have the curiosity of a child? Where the people loved to laugh and cry was none of your rascal's business. You insisted on going forward to take a look. Well, this would be fun and lively. There's a saying that goes, it is easier to go but harder to leave. This was equal to the decision to stay here. If I lay on the floor now, it did not mean that I could fly freely in the air. If there was a slight movement, it would be easily noticeable by the people below. They did not notice it just now as they were laughing. Now that the laughter had ended, their senses would return and grew sharp. Any slight movements would be understood and be seen by them immediately. And after they had realized, he could feel a bitter taste in his mouth. Did I even need to say further? So many experts who would encircle, hunted me down and murdered me. Even if I used my own abilities, with one time leveled up, it would be of no avail. The rest would be able to swallow up, literally, like how they ate salted vegetable, with ease. This white shirt person was Xian Continent's scapegoat master of the generation. No, wrong. It should be the generation's king of killer, Supreme Killer Chu Li Hun. Recently, this Supreme Killer could be said to be very unlucky. When it was shut down, there was legends from the martial arts worlds and these stories were given a big upgrade. In the past, at most he was said to be a Supreme Killer and appeared to not have actually killed any Supremes. But now, it was with solid proof that he was a Supreme Killer, and it was not just one Supreme that he wiped out. What an impressive reputation. Just like how a saying goes, even though one may not be in the martial arts world, but in the martial arts world, words of one's reputation will be spread around. But only that almost no one would have known that this Supreme Killer's reputation was to become others' scapegoat. It might be said that he was a veritable Scapegoat Supreme and even a Scapegoat Venerable. Recently, anything surreptitious that evil Lord, Jun Mo Xie, Killer Jun, had done would be all named under Chu Li Hun when no sources could be identified. Regardless if there was a reason or there was not, Chu Li Hun had muddle-headedly helped as a scapegoat, backed by an ounce of energy anyway, and he was having fun. Under unknown circumstances that he was a scapegoat. At this level, Chu Li Hun was considered as the first since olden history. Only that the wrongdoings blamed on him were unable to be explained. Who would listen to the explanation of Supreme Killer? Were they retarded? Even if they did not grow a brain, or a mold had been grown in the brain, they would not be that stupid. So, Chu Li Hun, the rascal, had been terribly unlucky during this period. After a few years of self-seclusion and making successful breakthroughs, he had happily and excitedly ended the period of self-seclusion and was back in the human world with soaring aspirations. He had just wanted to pick up some business deals and was even pondering about looking for a Supreme, for real, or any other person, to build a veritable reputation and to boost his glory. And later on, if there were any chances to find a few experts to exchange and learn from them with regards to his new trick. But it would really have to say that Supreme Killer still had some good luck, as his wishes were almost coming true, although they came true in varied ways. An example was that the moment he came out from his period of seclusion, he withdrew the decision to get a few business deals as he still had to boost his prestige. He had directly reached his prime point and was victorious compared to the past. He had even fought a Supreme Killer and there seemed to have a few Supreme levels and above under him. It was a complete attainment of his wishes that had exceeded his expectations and was through a baffling way that he was able to attain them. This was not the end yet, because he still had another wish. But this wish did not require him to realize himself, as very soon, there would be n number of experts looking to have exchanges with him. And it was a life and death exchange, and in successions. Such a strenuous form of exchange had caused the Supreme Killer himself to moan incessantly. Of course, the almighty Supreme Killer did not know all the reasons behind his glory at all. Chu Li Han never had once thought that when he came out of the period of self-seclusion and the moment he entered the mortal world, he was instantly caught by the others, and was followed with having a few supreme experts knocking at his door. Such a big battle. Chu Li Han battled against heavy odds and fled after defeat. He had thought that the matter had rested. If he had muddle-headedly lost his advantage, then he would just let it be, since they were from the great golden city. An independent killer like myself would not dare to offend them. How would he know that not only did the matter had not ended, but it was just the start to a nightmare? The exchange had been upgraded, and it was no longer a one-to-one duo, but was a direct mass attack on a weak. After a few rounds of battle continuously, Chu Li Han had noticed something was wrong. What was actually happening? At the start, he was still able to manage with ease since he had just made a few breakthroughs, and he felt even more familiar as he battled more. But he had to flee directly when the number of Supreme Expert increased from 2 to 4. And later on, it got beyond his measure as there were 8 of them employed to encircle and to kill him off. This was not just excessive but ruthless. They employed experts that are above the level of Supreme, and not just one of them. The heaven. The earth. Why was my life so torturous? Who had I offended? My goodness. I did not even dig into the great golden city's graves. Chu Li Han counted once all the evil deeds that he had done and was really puzzled. Whose ancestors did I offend such that they did not want to spare my life? At this time, Guan was so angry that he was already unable to catch his breath in the battle. He had finally understood why the public was laughing. When he turned his back, he pointed at Jun Mo Xie with his wobbly finger. Almost seemed like a male duck whose feet was being stepped on and was grabbed by the throat. He was in deep sorrow. His heart was aching as he spoke. Jun Mo Xie. You despicable rascal. Old master. I. And you. One of us shall not live. Jun Mo Xie twitched his mouth. Definitely both of us cannot coexist. Weren't you lying on the ground just now? How do you stand? You think that you are standing straight just by straightening your neck? Let me tell you, this is too far-fetched. You are still missing your chest and your stomach. Never feel too good about yourself. Your kind of game is not needed in the field. Even if you have the heart, you still need someone to tolerate you, and this isn't possible. He pondered about it carefully, thinking it through, and spoke in a definite tone. It is definitely impossible with person. Even if it is with an elephant. I'm afraid it is not possible. You're mighty. You are too overbearing. Guan was so mad that his mouth was wide open and was not able to speak for a long time. But his long tongue was hanging off his mouth like a hanging corpse. Bloody corpse that was hanging and swaying. He was panting heavily. Xi Jinghong coughed loudly for a few times, looking at the public with a stern eye. What he meant was, all to stop laughing at him. He is our own. The public then was forced to stop laughing. There were a few who held on a strange face but tried their best to control, and there were others who, eventually, could not control and chuckled. They quickly used their hands to cover their mouth, but was met with Xi Jinghong's cold stern gaze, shot through like a bolt of electricity. The few of them quickly put on a stern look, silently cursing in their hearts. What were you staring at? Were you really that serious? Weren't you laughing with joy just now? Only the magistrate was free to burn the house, but the commoners were forbidden to even light a lamp. If you chose not to laugh, then you went as far as to forbid us to laugh as well. You were really taking bureaucracy seriously. Turning to look at Jun Mo Xie, Xi Jinghong spoke in a stern manner. Jun Mo Xie. We treat each other as foe. But for the people on my side, which of them are not well-known and reputable figures? Your unrestrained insult is too much to handle. And to say that Gobu Huan is your senior. Too much. Senior? Jun Mo Xie opened his mouth wide. Please speak clearly. Who is the one that was overmuch? And he? A senior? Is this how a senior act, chasing after me and beating me all over? Does that mean that I should not hide and fight back? Zi Jinghong. If this is what you meant, so should I stand obediently to allow your subordinate to kill me in order to not count as overmuch? Jun Mo Xie. You obviously know that that is not what I meant. How could you confuse the right and the wrong? Zi Jinghong was raging with fury. This rascal was being unreasonable, sharp with his words, and was really hard to handle. How did I confuse the right and the wrong? Isn't what I just said the truth? Then you speak. What do you actually mean? I retreat a million steps back and let me say this, at most I only took advantage to escape. Do you even think that I can defeat him? Jun Mo Xie reasoned out. You allow me, an immature being who is less than 20, to battle with a weird being who is 100 years old or more. And you actually said that I am too much? Zi Jinghong. How did you even dare to put this into words? I really felt sad for you. What a person you are. Having such thick skin isn't a good thing. Does someone become unformidable when he is not ashamed of himself? Zi Jinghong was angry to the point that his lungs felt like bursting and bellowed. He had no doubt lost his magnanimity as a senior by laying his hands on you. But what intentions do you harbor when you humiliated and caused him to be a laughingstock? How did I humiliate him? Jun Mo Xie was infuriated. And he stood up. So ultimately, who is the one who humiliated him? Zi Jinghong. Regarding this matter, you have to explain it to me clearly. It was how he looked. Could you blame it on me? I had only merely spoken the truth. Could it be that you disagree? The person who truly humiliated him. You have to ask his dad and his mom. They had bad genes. Do you understand that? How could you blame me? Could it be that you think I am his dad? Jun Mo Xie spat. Feck. If I had such a son. My God. I would have stuck him on the wall directly. And never would I bring him out and humiliate myself. Look at how he looks. He was born a tortoise brain. How will this affect the appearance of the city? Even if he participates in heavenly battle, the people from the other race will be proud of themselves when they see him. Compared to him, they actually look handsome and dashing. Looking ugly is not his fault. But when he gains attention, it will be his fault. You say, is this reasonable? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 607. Cycling Battles. Tire her out. Zi Jinghong let out a bellow and shouted. Kill. Go. Everyone go. Surround him and kill. Zi Jinghong finally understood that there was no way to win against this brat in a quarrel. He did not want to be infuriated to death. It's definitely not worth it. Following his command, the 30 experts from the illusionary Blood Sea and the 13 from the Supreme Golden City launched forward together. The head of the Supreme Golden City, Xiao Wei Cheng, had not spoken a single word apart from his introduction. He stared at Mei Shuayan with absolute hatred even when everyone else was laughing. This woman. If not for her, he would not have let 15 of his brothers die in silence and 2 of them get dismembered by her. He did not even dare to stop her from leaving with her unlawful partner. This was the biggest disgrace of Xiao Wei Cheng's life. The biggest humiliation. One that was really difficult to avenge. If he could not kill Mei Shuayan, it would remain to haunt him for life. Xiao Weicheng was crystal clear about this. Therefore, he did not speak at all so that he could muster his power to deliver a striking blow when it was time. I will kill that witch. Mei Shuayan is now surrounded and have no way of escaping. I will kill her first. And it will be Chu Chi-hun's turn next. Supreme Assassin? I wonder if he is dead by now. Half of a month had passed since he spread out the information. His men only said that they had fought with Chu Chi-hun a few times, but he had gotten away every time. This enraged Xiao Weicheng, but also kept him hopeful at the same time. He wished that Chu Chi-hun could live longer so that he could kill that supreme assassin by himself. That would be magnificent. Jun Mo Xie. You little brat. Big bastard. How dare you make fun of me? Now it's time for you to pay with your life. Guan roared as he dived at Jun Mo Xie. His hideous facial expression said everything about his hatred towards Jun Mo Xie. It did not matter anymore that Jun Mo Xie was obviously supported by a very strong master who he was not supposed to offend. I must kill this little brat. Jun Mo Xie had already stomped upon his dignity and turned him into the biggest joke in the three holy lands. The reputation he spent so many years building up was completely destroyed today. But it was all his own fault after all. If he had not said that he wanted to eat Mei Shuayan's meat, Jun Mo Xie would not have teased him so badly. There was only himself to blame if the root cause was taken into account. The battle immediately ignited. Mei Shuayan engaged up front as she propelled herself forward like a gust of wind with her swords. When faced with pressure from all sides, it was always best to attack preemptively on one side. This would reduce the pressure from the other three sides by leaving them to pounce upon emptiness. Her exceptional combat experience and loss of interest in showing mercy made her decisive in her actions. Jun Mo Xie's body also shook around as if he would advance behind Mei Shuayan. However, his true intentions were to pull back, which was revealed by a sudden back flip that gave him a rapid retreat. Huan charged forward like a giant turtle surfing through the waves with his bald head, hideous face, and throbbing veins. He held a pair of odd-shaped weapons in both of his hands. It was too curved to be a sword or a saber. The sharp tip was almost pointing backwards towards the handle. It was a hook. Huan's hook. Jun Mo Xie dodged like a fish as he continued to taunt. Huan, with your tongue outside all the time like that, I have to say no one is as dedicated as you at being a dog. And you're even using a hook as a weapon and have an indent 3 on your bald head. You sure have a befitting name. Huan did not respond. He reached for Jun Mo Xie with his hook as if he wanted to tear Jun Mo Xie's body apart. Jun Mo Xie yelped as his body was hooked up and could no longer escape. Huan was pleased as he pulled back the hook with full force and shouted, "Die! You wicked little brat!" As he mustered all his strength, Huan suddenly realized that whatever he hooked was simply thin air. The ground below him was softening as he hit with full blast off target. Although he was clueless as to what would happen, he was already prepared given his experience from their previous engagement. Huan pulled himself out of the original spot and continued to pursue Jun Mo Xie. Jun Mo Xie appeared to be on the losing end as he dodged and escaped passively. The pair soon went out of sight as they turned to the back of a large boulder. Mei Shuayan wielded her sword unpredictably, gradually forcing the 6 experts surrounding her back. The majority were yet to be engaged in this battle. They were observing the action at a distance, ready to join in at any time. Zi Jinghong was a very prudent man. He would not allow much casualty within his man. Therefore he grouped the men into 7 groups, each with 5 from the illusionary Blood Sea and 13 from the Supreme Golden City. Each group would only deal with a few blows from the opponent and would immediately back off regardless the outcome while the next group engaged. And this cycle would continue on. Those who were at the side focused on recovering to prepare for the next round of combat and preventing Mei Shuayan from escaping. Granted, it was the most effective strategy against Mei Shuayan. Tire her out. As long as she could not break through the surrounding circle, she would have to deal with the many experts. No matter how powerful and skillful she was, she would eventually be defeated. They could even afford to keep this battle till next year because all the experts would have the chance to rest. On the other hand, there was none for Mei Shuayan. Attention! Simply stop her from recovering her strength and keep yourself safe. Everything will be fine as long as we don't make mistakes, Xi Jinghong ordered in a serious manner. Although he did not direct this instruction to Xiao Weicheng, it was obvious. The biggest risk factor was Xiao Weicheng's urge to avenge. If Xiao Weicheng was overly audacious in his attempt to fight Mei Shuayan, he might be able to deal some damage, but would definitely cause her to use her ultimate techniques. Her ultimate techniques were known to cause widespread destruction and a lot of commotion. If that was to take place, she would be able to break free as long as she was not killed. So it was best to slowly drain her like this. Anyway, I am very patient. Xi Jinghong had much confidence in his strategy. However, this decision was prompted by her battle with elusive world of immortals, where all 29 of their experts were slaughtered by her. This left a profound impression in Xi Jinghong. Furthermore, he also noticed just now that she unbelievably seemed to not have been hurt at all. That was why he chose a conservative strategy. Even if Mei Shuayan had the best cultivation in history, they would still have the chance to retreat. After all, they had declared that this battle was simply a friendly match. Nevertheless, dealing with this sort of endless attack best revealed one's real skills. With a few more cycles, Xi Jinghong would be able to accurately gauge that her skills were not far from making history. By then, they would have to intensify their blows if they wanted to continue occupying her. This was a breathtaking scene for Chu Chi-hong, who was still behind the big boulder on the hill. How intense! I wonder how many times I can witness this sort of action in my lifetime. Chu Chi-hun was amazed by the formidable strength of this woman with goddess-like beauty. She was not slightly disadvantaged in this fight against 2 above supreme experts and 4 supreme experts simultaneously. In fact, she was gaining an upper hand. How can there be such powerful woman who is so beautiful? Chu Chi-hun was astonished. Being able to deal with the forces from the 3 holy lands was enough for him to admire, because he definitely would not dare to. At the same time, Chu Chi-hong felt relieved. So they were not after me. Feck. They really frightened me. I am really becoming a timid little brat this few days. But having witnessed this is beneficial for my own skills if I reflect on my enlightenments. Although he was still careful with his breathing so that he would not be revealed, he still paid great attention to this rare battling scene. He discovered this trip with increasing in worth as he was further enlightened by what he was seeing. In the battlefield, Mei Shuayan was still as perfectly composed and elegant as she always had been. It was already the 3rd group on the side of the 2 holy lands. These experts were indeed good. They made sure that their weapons did not come into contact with Mei Shuayan's sword as they knew it was exceptionally sharp and hard. They rotated around her like merry-go-round as blows were exchanged. Mei Shuayan was not panting at all. She was not anxious and did not change her strategy despite clearly knowing the opponent's intentions. She was waiting for Jun Mo Xie's action as there must be a reason for him to lure Go but Huan away. She would not leave even if these guys forced her to, as long as Jun Mo Xie was not back. She made many breakthroughs recently, so there really was no such thing as being trapped by these guys. She could leave whenever she wished. The battle continued to yield no results. The trajectory of her sword suddenly changed to one that resembled wind, which was lively and shapeless. It now appeared quick with more uncertainty. Hurricanes, gentle breezes, freezing winter gusts, and depressing autumn wind. It resembled all of this. As she brandished her sword in this ingenious manner, she seemed to be clearly conveying the idea that her new movements carried a different intention. This set of movements was unfamiliar to the six of them. They immediately panicked and their formation was disturbed. Xi Jinghong frowned and ordered, "The next group." Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 608. Four-Season Ultimate Blade. The six people pulled out their blades and went on the offensive once again. Throwing themselves into the sparring ring, they slid past the previous six. Each person's objective was very clear. Just when the person that had attacked began to withdraw, the next person would follow up with their attack. It was a seamless coordination, not leaving any chances for the enemy to stir havoc and create confusion. The first group that had retreated speedily assimilated themselves with the crowd as they tried to catch their breaths. Only after they had taken a few gasps, they began to break out in cold sweat. To deal with a high-rank venerable like Mei Shuayan, how could one dare drop his guard? Even though it was only sparring with her from the start to the very end, they still felt an enormous amount of pressure. And it was very tense. Because, even if it was just sparring, as long as they showed a single opening, Mei Shuayan could still take them down in a moment and break free. By now, Mei Shuayan's wind-like sword technique no longer appeared as shocking because the new group had seen it played out once and gained basic understanding of it. So, even though they did not really understand the full extent of it, they still had an idea of how to counter it, and it showed in their battle. However, her technique changed again unexpectedly. This change caught them by an even bigger surprise. The trajectories became longer and formed a denser continuum. It now resembled the misty spring rain that continued without stopping. The six facing her felt as if there was a unique warmth to spring rushing into them. The tips of their hairs seemed to be covered in moisture. The six of them were obviously unprepared for this sudden, peculiar change. With their 100+ years of experience in combat, the situation did not become chaotic despite their initial shock. They slowly overcame the temporary disadvantage with either their experience or brute force. Nevertheless, Mei Shuayan again changed her technique. The sword now resembled a summer downpour. It was like large raindrops falling from the sky, accompanied by strong gusts. The six of them simultaneously felt like they were in the midst of an ocean. The raindrops joined to form threads of water that shot down continually from the sky. The six were immediately thrown off guard as three of them were hurt. One of them could not even lift his shoulder anymore because it was pierced through by Mei Shuayan's sword. He would not have survived if the other five did not come to his rescue. Next group. Xi Jinghong now had a really solemn face. Mei Shuayan had already used around 6 different ingenious sword techniques until now. It was a mystery where she had learnt it from. They had not heard of any news that Tian Fa Forest's mystical beasts were so adept with weapons. For the past 10,000 years, the rumors they heard only revolved around the almighty Tian Fa Heaven's sword. What is happening? It's really strange. Another group came forward again, but the group that stepped down this time found itself in a much more pitiful state. The next six were initially able to defend themselves well, as they thought they had already had a grasp on Mei Shuaiyan's techniques. They could never be more wrong as the sword technique switched yet again. This round, it resembled the depressing and lonely autumn rain with its falling leaves and the sad wind. The whole battlefield was instantly engulfed by desolation. This six had already formed a plan earlier and were very confident of themselves. But once they began exchanging blows, they realized that things were developing in a way far from what they had planned. Exchanging blows with a high rank required absolute precision. A minuscule deviation resulted in the difference between life and death. Not to mention that they had made many mistakes at this moment. The six only felt that the world around them was in a state of a reclusion, with endless murderous intent. Only the next moment, they had already landed themselves in a situation that was far worse off than the six-man team before them. No one had ever seen or heard of this sort of technique before. If they were merely facing an ingenious sword technique, it would be easier to handle. After all, they were supremes and were not only experienced, but also physically strong. If an ordinary Sky Xian warrior was to slash at them, they would not even be hurt even if they simply stood there defenseless. The biggest problem was that the person they were facing was Venerable Mei. This was a huge problem. Not only was their Xian cultivation way behind that of Mei Shuaiyan's, she was also using a divine weapon. How tragic they were. The abilities of superior supremes were already beyond belief. But against Venerable Mei, who also held a divine sword, they were nothing more than just tofu. Not to mention her blade. Even if she was using an ordinary blade, one would definitely not dare to take her blow with his physical body. On top of all those was such a bizarre fighting style, giving them an even a harder time to handle. Seeing that the situation was not in his favor, Zi Jinghong hollered, "Next group." Xiao Wei Cheng roared in response as he led his men headfirst into a direct attack. At this moment, it had already turned into a situation where 12 people were working together to fight against Mei Shuaiyan so that they could hold their ground and not lose immediately. But as more people joined the fray, the sparring ring naturally expanded, and Zi Jinghong, who was watching from the side, naturally felt his unease gradually well up. Facing the combined attack of 12 elite warriors, the stress on Mei Shuaiyan was suddenly intensified, and the pressure more than doubled. Mei Shuaiyan laughed coldly without a single trace of fear on her face. A stream of reflections from blades showered down as if it were the autumn rain. Xiao Wei Cheng roared angrily, refusing to retreat from the battle. Instead, he rushed in head first, and the blade sliced through his skin, creating 2 cuts. Even though it was not very deep, but fresh blood spurted out from his wounds. Xiao Wei Cheng, who sat on one of the 3 pearl throne in the Great Golden City and had abilities ranked in the top 3 among the experts present, was surprisingly hurt immediately during the first exchange of blows, even when they had 12 men against the opponent. This was truly shocking. But Xiao Wei Cheng's injury did pay. For this round of attacks, he single-handedly held off more than half of the power from Mei Shuaiyan's attack alone. For the rest of his team, the pressure lifted off of them was enormous. And with that moment, they were also free from the suppression of her sword techniques, and managed to close in on her. Mei Shuaiyan was emotionless. Suddenly, she leaped into the sky using an enemy's sword tip as the launching pad. For that supreme warrior, he intended to take that chance to injure his opponent, but he sensed an enormous but gentle power emitting from the blade, its incoming momentum as destructive as lightning and as unstoppable as tidal surge. With a loud bang, it passed through the body of the blade and his forearm as it pierced through the vein, going straight for the heart. Wah! It was as if a 10.000-pound hammer had landed a heavy blow on his chest, and his face immediately turned an ashen white. staggering back a few steps. Before he could stop his own momentum, a fresh mouthful of blood gushed out from his lips as he fell to the ground, losing all his combat abilities. With a leap, Xi Jinghong picked up that injured elite as he quickly retreated. When he turned back to look at the battleground, the situation was already greatly altered. Aside from Mei Shuayan taking down her enemy by stepping on his blade, she also leapt into the sky, wielding her sword with perfect control. All of a sudden, the entire weather seemed to have changed into a freezing, chilling winter from the feeling of autumn before. In the previous moment, the solemnity of autumn was apparent, but right now, in this moment, it had already become a freezing winter. The freezing cold winter gale blew continuously as miles of snowflakes began to fall. Her long blade was like snow and frost. Gliding gently, the cold gale shrieked loudly as if it were crying ghosts and shrieking deities. And once again, her fighting style began to change. Xiao Weicheng yelled loudly as he glared madly. His long, white hair had loosened up and became disheveled. Spots of blood were evident all over his body. His attack stance was the most aggressive, but he was also the person who was most heavily injured. This set of ingenious sword technique that Mei Shuayan had just displayed originated from Jun Mo Xie. In the past few days, Jun Mo Xie taught her the set of sword technique he had learned in his past life. It was an attack sequence designed to kill with thousands of variations embedded. Even Jun Mo Xie, who had chanced upon this technique in his past life, had to spend an entire 3 months to learn it. Unexpectedly, Mei Shuayan was naturally gifted. With only less than 10 days, she had already mastered this entire sequence. This made Jun Mo Xie drop his jaw in shock, to the extent that he nearly dislocated it. Dang! This girl probably has an IQ much higher than mine in my past life. This set of techniques depicted the alternation of the seasons, spring winds turning into rain, the blazing heat of summer, the solemnity of autumn winds, and the snowy cold winters. The vivid change in seasons was embedded within this sequence, and so it was named Four-Season Ultimate Blade. Even though they called it a single sequence, the individual styles representing each season contained several variations as if they were different sequences. Although Mei Shuayan was naturally more gifted than others, with the short time she spent training, her techniques were still not of completely maturity. Therefore, as Xi Jinghong ordered such mediocre attacks, she decided to use this technique as practice while waiting for Jun Mo Xie. Unexpectedly, the result was great beyond belief. So, Mei Shuayan decided to try out the sequence in order. Throughout the entire battle, Mei Shuayan realized the beauty of this sequence. The complexity of the blade sequence was a real threat in battle. How terrifying it was. Mei Shuayan did expect that it would be original and different, but she had not known the extent of its peculiarity. The Four-Season Ultimate Blade was naturally incomparable to the Tian Fa Heaven's Sword based on their destructive power. But its flexibility, detailedness, complexity, and beauty was far beyond that of the Tian Fa Heaven's Sword. Especially when she used her different states of mind to draw the essence of the sequences, she would be enlightened in different ways. Mei Shuayan suddenly realized that when she used this sequence against her enemies, her mental state improved as the style depictions changed. This unexpected effect left her delighted with joy. Over this period, she had been using Jun Mo Xie's magical pills to improve her fighting abilities by leaps and bounds. Her training speed was also much faster than before. But as a professional swords master, while she was celebrating her fast progress, she was also secretly worried that if she single-mindedly chased after improving her fighting abilities, she would neglect advancing her own mental state, which would have adverse effects. One had to know. For one's Xian cultivation to advance, there needed to be an appropriate mental state to support it. If only her physical abilities improved and not her mental state, then it would be as though she were holding onto a huge bucket of explosives. If she were at the brink of a breakthrough without the correct mental state, she would be haunted down by her emotional devils. That was why training one's mental state was crucial. The acquisition of this ingenious sword technique was unexpectedly helpful for her lacking mental state. Even though Jun Mo Xie had learnt this set of technique in his past life, he did not have such a deep understanding of it. He was the assassin of the century and had to be fast, accurate, and brutal in his moves, so he rarely used this overcomplicated technique to deal with his enemies. Mei Shuayan was actually feeling more refreshed as the battle progressed. The immense pressure coming onto her from all directions was motivating her to draw out her potential. She was even like Xi Jinghong, hoping that this cycle of fights would continue for a longer time, so that she could develop a deeper understanding. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 609. Cruelty. If Xi Jinghong knew that the infallible, safest and most effective plan that he'd painstakingly thought up was simply being treated as a sharpening stone for his opponent, one truly wonders what level of depression he would sink into. As for Mei Shuayan, the only thing she was still worried about was what Jun Mo Xie was doing by luring that detestable Guan away. The battle on Mei Shuayan's side was extremely intense, but the battle on Jun Mo Xie's side had already concluded. At his best, Guan was merely at the supreme realm level of strength. With the current abilities of the young Master Jun, how could he have a good time? On the other side, Jun Mo Xie coldly placed his long sword against Guan's neck as he stared at the wretched-looking spirit Xian expert. "Kneel down for this, daddy, you abominable piece of shut." Guan's eyes blazed with rage as he spat a mouthful of saliva towards Jun Mo Xie. "You're the piece of shut, you donghua brat. Kill me if you want to, but you want me to kneel before you? You're dreaming. Human scum. It appears that you're scum all the way to the bones. This daddy insists on making you kneel." Jun Mo Xie laughed cruelly and swiftly kicked out twice. Guan screamed wretchedly as both his knees were shattered. His legs collapsed under him as he fell into a kneeling position. A sharp pain shot up his body as soon as his shattered knees touched the ground. Guan's eyes turned upwards, as though he was about to faint from the shock. Jun Mo Xie sent a stream of spirit energy into Guan's head, keeping him awake. He would not allow this fellow to lose consciousness, so that he could enjoy the endless torment with a clear mind. Guan had endured a myriad of techniques at Jun Mo Xie's hands all along the way during the chase. One moment, he'd fall into a deep pit, then he was suddenly covered in a layer of snow. After that, he was frozen like an icicle, only to be then burned like a torch. He already suffered unspeakably long ago. Jun Mo Xie had not even wasted much effort to capture this tortoise-headed fellow alive. Guan, you like to eat human flesh a lot, don't you? Jun Mo Xie lowered his voice and questioned. This was the real reason for his anger. This son of a beach trash actually wants to eat my little Shuayan. How gutsy. If I don't torture this human scum properly, how can I vent the anger in my heart? Guan's words had infuriated him, and drawn out his sadistic killing intent. From that moment, he decided, I do not want to just kill this bastard. I want him to die with the utmost agony. I want him to suffer unspeakable torment before he dies. So what if I do? Jun Mo Xie, this daddy can tell you right now that I do not just want to eat your tender flesh. Wait for this, daddy. This daddy will eat your entire Jun family's flesh. Gobu Huan was in so much pain that his entire face had turned yellow. Beads of perspiration the size of beans rolled down the sides of his face. But despite that, he refused to so much as groan. His deep Xian Qi had already been sealed by Jun Mo Xie, and he could not explode his core and commit suicide even if he wanted to. Most of his teeth had been shattered by Jun Mo Xie in a way that wasn't too painful, yet still allowed him to talk. But if he wanted to bite off his own tongue, that was impossible. He was only left with the root of his teeth in his gums. How could he bite off his tongue? Your spirit is tough, as expected of the demeanor of a spirit Xian expert. You're staring death in the face and yet you can still wag your tongue. I respect that. Jun Mo Xie praised with a sneer. With a quick flick of his hand, Gobu Huan's shirt was torn off with a loud shredding sound, revealing a large patch of skin. Gobu Huan, in this life, there are only two people whom I absolutely detest to the bone. These are the people who must be killed at all cost. The first is Blizzard Silver City's Xiao Han. You should feel very honored, because you are the second. Your greatest mistake is not that you like to eat human flesh. It's that you actually want to eat the flesh of my woman. And you still deemed it as an honorable thing, boasting arrogantly in front of so many people. After being subdued by me, not only are you unrepentant, you actually dared to say that you want to eat the flesh of my entire Jun family. Now, if I don't treat you properly, won't I be letting you down? Jun Mo Xie laughed coldly. Not to mention that you're also from the illusory Blood Sea, where our factions are already enemies. Even if you're the son of God, I will make sure that you suffer an extreme level of pain before letting you die. Don't worry, I will not end your life with a single stroke. I've decided to grant you a bit more time to enjoy this world. Although my spirit is also rather unyielding. I just happen to really dislike people who act like they're tough bones to break. If I don't make you scream and beg me with your own mouth, my name will cease to be Jun Mo Xie from now on. Gobu Huan has nothing to say since I've fallen into your trap. It's also naturally a simple task for you to kill me. But if you think that this daddy is going to beg, Jun Mo Xie, you're dreaming. If you have any capabilities, bring them all out for me to see. If this daddy so much as creases my brow, I will not be counted as a real man. Gobu Huan forcibly endured the pain in his knees and spat through his gritted teeth. A real man. I'm quite interested to see just how many hours a real man like you can hold on for. Jun Mo Xie waved his hand outwards and with a few quick slashes, several bloody holes appeared on Gobu Huan's chest and back. Gobu Huan grinned uglily, showing his toothless mouth. Jun Mo Xie, is this all you're capable of? I don't mind telling you, these childish techniques of yours are simply too weak. I'll let you in on something else. This daddy does not only eat the flesh of beauties. No, the flesh of youths are equally delicious. Even the flesh of old fogies, the kind that is so old that you'll have to chew half a day to swallow it, is still acceptable to me. If this daddy manages to escape, Jun Mo Xie, I'll see to it that your Jun family is gathered together in a cage, and I'll rear them like pigs in a pen for slaughtering. Every few days, I'll drag one out, wash the person clean and eat them raw with wine. Ha ha ha. I heard that throughout his life, Jun Tian has fought in countless wars. It's true that he's old, but I'm sure that his muscles are still very strong. I'll definitely enjoy that. Oh, I also heard that you, little bastard, are quite the perverted silk pants. Your other mistress, that Guan Han, is quite pretty. Don't worry, I'll take good care of her. I'll tear off her flesh bit by bit. But relax. It won't be anything fatal. I won't let her die that quickly until I'm done. I'll listen to her moans very patiently. Ha ha ha. Gobu Huan licked his lips with his completely red tongue. His face twisted like a deranged pervert. His sinister little eyes were squinted slightly as he looked at Jun Mo Xie. His entire person seemed to have sunk into a state of cruel pleasure as his imagination fueled his perversion. I heard that there's also a Dugu Xiao Yi. Am I right? This daddy definitely has to get a taste of a young lass like that. Huh. And if I recall, you have another little girl in your bedroom? What's her name? Ah. Who cares? In any case, this daddy here will not let a single one of them off. I'll eat the heart first. Then the liver, then. As his words reached this point, he suddenly screeched aloud like a rat dropped into boiling oil. You will not have an opportunity like that. In contrast, the life of your family, because of your words today, has become forfeit. Today, as I've promised earlier, I'll let you have fun turning into the piece of shit you are. Anticipate it. Jun Mo Xie scoffed coolly. His face was completely expressionless as he pinched a bit of snow-white salt in his hand, gently scattering it into Gobu Huan's wounds. Not a single speck of salt was wasted. Gobu Huan shrieked loudly, his voice shrill and bitter. His body convulsed uncontrollably, and Jun Mo Xie simply stood to the side, watching him expressionlessly while he sprinkled some salt into the wounds from time to time. Is it comfortable, Gobu Huan? This is just the first appetizer dish. Gobu Huan screamed and laughed at the same time. Comfortable. It's too fecking comfortable. Jun Mo Xie. You have guts. This method is not bad. If I ever get the chance to catch your Jun family, I will also use salt to season them as I eat them. Then, I will spray some wine on them for a better taste. You god-danged son of a... You bastard. Ho! What a real man. Alright. The next dish is coming up. Jun Mo Xie shook his head with a wry smile. It wasn't clear where he got his weapons, but a bottle of chili paste had appeared in his hands. Smiling warmly, he poured the chili paste carefully into the wounds and asked gently, Gobu Huan, does it feel even more enjoyable now? Gobu Huan's body stiffened completely as soon as the chili paste entered his wounds. He felt an unstoppable impulse to scream in pain, but the agony gripped his chest, causing him to be unable to utter a single sound. Long, green veins rose from his muscles, as though they wanted to tear out of his skin. His two eyes were open wide, and the pupils contracted and expanded continuously. Although he could still hear Jun Mo Xie's words, he could only open and close his mouth, unable to form a single word. His entire body had cramped up with pain. As expected of a real man. Ah! To think that you can even endure this level of pain without making a sound. Indeed, the endurance level of a supreme rank expert is really not exaggerated. But just eating some plain dishes without any soup is too monotonous. So let me make a nice soup for our Mr. Manly Man to soothe his throat. Jun Mo Xie clapped his hands in an impressed manner. With a flick of his hand, a large ball of white snow appeared in his hand. Jun Mo Xie revolved his xian qi quickly, forming the snow into a big bowl. A bunch of incredibly spicy peppers were thrown into the bowl, along with another ball of snow which melted immediately after entering the bowl. Jun Mo Xie placed one hand under the bowl, and in a short period of time, steam rose upwards as a strong smell of chili and pepper permeated the air. Surprisingly, the bowl of ice did not melt at all. A burst of nose-numbing steam gushed out of the bowl as soon as the top was lifted. Jun Mo Xie held Gobu Huan's nose up with one hand. forcing his nostrils open. Then, very carefully and patiently, he poured the entire content of the bowl through his nostrils and into his stomach. Gah! Wu Gobu Huan made a strange choking noise as a ball of fire surged through his throat, his windpipes, his lungs and his stomach. In that moment, he understood what the true meaning of burning organs was. Jun Mo Xie. Kill me. Kill me, are you convinced? Jun Mo Xie flung his sleeves and stood over him, his eyes cold and emotionless. Gobu Huan, I saw that you at least have some endurance. Just admit that you're convinced. Kneel down and kowtow to me, and I will immediately kill you. I will not continue to torture you. You can forget about Fek. Your Mo. Gobu Huan's eyes were dry and cracked with pain, but he still would not relent. Very good. You do have some spine. It seems like my regular set meals are not going to be enough for your, appetite. Jun Mo Xie's body shook and disappeared abruptly. When he reappeared, he held 5, 6 mountain rats by the tail with one hand. In the other hand, he clutched 7, 8 snakes. Each snake was moving lethargically, and it was obvious that they were in the middle of their hibernation when they were dug out by Jun Mo Xie. Jun Mo Xie looked at Gobu Huan, a light smile hanging on his face. Gobu Huan, it's still not too late for you to beg for mercy now. If you still continue to be this stubborn, this young master is going to bring you the main dishes. At that time, it'll be too late to repent. Gobu Huan gritted his teeth and closed his eyes. What a heroic fellow. I hope that you can keep this courage up till the end. I have high hopes for you, so please don't disappoint me. Jun Mo Xie chucked the rats and the snakes to the ground, with his Xian Qi hovering over them. These animals did not dare to move at all. Following that, he ripped apart Gobu Huan's pant legs, and with a violent tug of the waistband, the mountain rats were chased into the pants where they squeaked and bit in random places. Gobu Huan raised his head and roared savagely as he felt the rats clawing and running along his skin. His hair was standing on its ends, and sheer terror could be seen in his eyes. All of a sudden, his body stiffened and his throat tightened as a strangled scream imprinted onto his face. A mountain rat had found the open skin and shattered bones on his knees, and had begun to bite and dig into it. The human who ate other humans was being eaten alive by rats today. The elders used to say that snakes eat rats for half a year, while rats eat snakes for the other half a year. Mountain rats are the bane of the hibernating snakes in the cold winter. Tell me, which part of your body do you think resembles snakes the most? If you really have a snake-like thing in your pants. You need to be careful. Jun Mo Xie grinned evilly as he squinted his eyes. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 610. Dual Destruction Battle Technique. Gobu Huan was bitten until his soul almost flew from his body in pain. Although he was a cruel person and loved to eat the flesh of other humans, when it became his turn to be eaten alive, it was something that his mind could not accept. In addition, after hearing Jun Mo Xie's words, he could indeed feel a few rats moving about his crotch area. The situation seemed to be exactly as Jun Mo Xie said, and it was quickly approaching that outcome. In that moment, his face contorted even more uglily, but at this point, his pain had already reached an extreme level. Even if he had the heart to beg for forgiveness, he lacked the strength to do so. The both of us are men, so rest assured, I will not just sit still and watch while they eat your snake. Here, I'll send a few snakes in to kill the rats and save your little snake. Gobu Huan. You need to be thankful. These snakes are supposed to be hibernating, but they've agreed to come out and save you. I'm sure you would want to provide a warm and comfortable dwelling place for them, right? And I heard that snakes like living in holes. Your body is not only warm, but there's even a cave for them to sleep in. Food and drinks included as well. What an amazing cooperation. It's a win-win. Jun Mo Xie moved to tear open Gobu Huan's pants again as he dangled the snakes before the latter's face. The snakes' tongues flicked in and out rapidly, and their shiny pointed heads waved energetically in the air. Gobu Huan's body trembled intensely as he finally broke down completely. Suddenly a loud "pu" sound rang out as an abhorrent odor permeated the air. Gobu Huan had actually peed and crapped himself in his fear. Piss and scat ran freely down his legs, forming a disgusting yellowish-brown patch beneath him. At the same time, his voice rose several pitches higher as snot and tears cascaded from his face. Don't, at this point. The way he looked at Jun Mo Xie was as if he was looking at a grand demon, an extremely evil one who'd killed countless people since time immemorial. There was only fear in his eyes, utter and complete terror. What? Say it clearly. Jun Mo Xie cupped his ears with one hand and leaned over with annoyance. Please don't do this. Don't. Please. I'm begging you. Just kill me. Gobu Huan clamped his legs together desperately as he cried and struggled. He was already terrified beyond redemption. I'm quite dissatisfied with your attitude. Jun Mo Xie furrowed his brows with annoyance. I told you just now. I need you to kneel down and kowtow to me before I would consider letting you go. You haven't even kowtowed yet. And you want me to kill you? One must learn to be sincere if they want the help of others. Gobu Huan, who was still twitching in pain, suddenly laughed pitifully as his facial muscles contorted. Gathering all his strength, he forcefully prostrated his body and madly smashed his head repeatedly against the ground as tears flooded out of his eyes. I'm begging you. I'm kowtowing to you. A great man like you has great magnanimity. So please kill me. Kill me, ah. Your voice is too soft. I can't hear you. You piece of shut. Jun Mo Xie harumphed coldly with displeasure. Or are you too lazy to even beg for mercy? I'm a piece of shut. Please. I beg you. Please kill me. Gobu Huan continued bashing his head against the ground with terror as he screamed with all his might. At this point, he could already sense that a few rats were sniffing at his little snake, and were clawing about his crotch area. The mere thought of being eaten alive by rats was so frightening that Gobu Huan was nearly insane from the fear. Not to mention, there was the very real possibility that he might turn into an incomplete man at any moment. Remember this well. If there's a next life, please don't try to act manly in front of me. I detest that kind of stuff. Since this meal was not agreeable with your appetite, let's end it early. Jun Mo Xie smiled warmly and said as he instantly killed all the rats in Gobu Huan's pants. Following that, blood of yellow flame stabbed swiftly into Gobu Huan's chest. Gobu Huan's body shivered as a relaxed expression came over his face. His eyes were fixed on Jun Mo Xie unblinkingly as he passed into the afterlife. There were no hatred or gratitude in his eyes, they only stared blankly, as if he wanted to engrave this face into his soul forever. Perhaps he wanted to remember to never provoke this person in the future. Or perhaps he wanted to seek revenge in the next life. Nobody knew. Jun Mo Xie drew his sword, and as he looked at the still body of the sword, he asked solemnly, "Was I too cruel?" The sword remained silent, its radiance flowing smoothly along the edges. This is the pugilist world. Jun Mo Xie declared as he looked at Gobu Huan's corpse. Actually, you were wrong. There's no such thing as a so-called real unyielding man in this world. There are many people who can face death calmly. But the methods that could cause one to live a life worse than death are plentiful. When facing an enemy you cannot defeat and have no hope of escaping from, the best course of decision is to kill yourself as quickly as possible. This is my advice to you in your next life. For a person who eats another fellow human, this method of death is still going too easy on you. Perhaps it's because my heart was too soft in the end. I originally wanted to break all your limbs. Then I'll help you to stop your bleeding. Turning you through and through into a piece of crap. In the last moments of your life, I would feed you your own flesh to sustain your life. Jun Mo Xie turned around swiftly and left. Quite a bit of time has passed. Shui Yan should have already familiarized herself with that sword technique by now, right? On Mei Shui Yan's side, they'd already rotated through numerous fighters. The battle had become fiercer and fiercer, and nearly everyone found it increasingly difficult to retain their composure. Seeing their teammates bleeding and injured while their opponents remained without casualty was exceptionally unsettling. Who would not be anxious in such a situation? This kind of rotation battle seemed to have little effect against Mei Shui Yan. She remained unflustered and calm, switching between long and short distance attacks. The long sword in her hand weaved like a perfect dome around her, not allowing anything past it. At times, she would be facing the combined techniques of 12 people. But despite that, she was defending and attacking together, with nary a trace of exhaustion to be found. Furthermore, the moment her opponents showed the slightest bit of opening, they would immediately face a lethal attack from her. In just this short period of time, nearly 10 people had received injuries of varying degrees. Even more scary was that the might of her strange sword technique was actually increasing in strength as the battle progressed. Zi Jinghong furrowed his brows lightly. For some reason, something seemed to be off about this entire thing. He watched as Mei Shui Yan's sword flowed like the gentleness of spring, raged with the heat of summer, turned bleak like autumn, and changed into freezing cold like winter. Over and over again. Unexpectedly, there weren't any deviations from the basic paths. She's using us to train her sword technique. Feck. Zi Jinghong finally understood. And in an instant, his hair flew into the air with rage. His face turned from white to red rapidly, then from red to purple, before finally settling on a dark, reddish purple. Truly, this fellow lived up to his surname, Z1. Thinking that he had set the best and most flawless plan, he joined the battle with triumph. But who would have thought that the person would actually turn around and use his plan as an opportunity instead? Looks like if you want to kill this Mei Shui Yan, it would be impossible to do so without paying an equivalent price. Zi Jinghong gritted his teeth and bit down firmly as he suddenly raised his voice. Blood Ocean Unit. Dual Destruction Battle Technique. This command boomed out, as loud as thunder from the 9 heavens. Even Chu Chi-hun, who was standing far away and observing the battle, could feel the intense killing intent. The illusory Blood Sea experts instantly chorused their obedience. Everyone's faces changed as they jumped out together. Only 3 people were left. And with a fierce roar, the 3's swordplay became much more violent and heavy as they attacked savagely, without regard for their own defense. At the same time, their bodies inflated slowly like a balloon. We'll be leaving all our unfinished businesses to you. This one shall make a move first. Brothers, let us meet again in our next life. A fierce cry rang out as a supreme expert leapt into the air. His sword seemed to have morphed into a blinding streak of lightning, which turned into a round pillar flashing with a frosty chill. Purple lightning flashed around as the sword stabbed towards Mei Shuayan. Man and sword as one. The sword beam charged forward unyieldingly. Everyone could clearly see that in this strike, that Supreme Realm expert's body had expanded abruptly as he moved through the air. Self-detonation. This was no longer just a simple man and sword as one. This was a strike that embodied all of the Supreme Realm expert's life, spirit, and strength. It was a suicidal strike that used one's life to attack one's enemy. The most standard art of perishing together. The most terrifying way of perishing together. The three people were originally responsible for controlling the opponent, using their lives as the price to restrict Mei Shuayan's movements. Following that, another person would be the main sword, flying in, man and sword as one, and self-detonating for good measure. The four people all worked together seamlessly, trading their lives and self-detonating together at the same time to blast their opponent to death. For Supreme ranked experts, self-detonating together. Mei Shuayan had experienced many battles and naturally also sensed the danger. Not daring to be slow, her long sword swept out like an avalanche, the sword chi erupting with unstoppable momentum. The illusory blood sea expert beside her completely disregarded the fact that his self-detonation process was not completed yet, drew out his sword and slashed towards Mei Shuayan. With a loud hong sound, his sword shattered apart. Without sparing a glance at his broken sword, he directly blasted out an intricate and profound palm strike, directing it upwards to meet Mei Shuayan's sword without regard for his own life. Pu. Mei Shuayan's sword instantly stabbed 33 times into the expert's body, entering through his chest and exiting from his back. But as if he could not even feel the wounds, the expert simply smiled sadly as he delivered his body forward. The blood ocean is invincible. May the Holy Land shine forever. The two other experts made the same choice as they threw themselves towards Mei Shuayan, leaving her no space to dodge. Blood and flesh flew everywhere, but each person seemed as if they'd gone crazy as they cried out loud and charged forward. Right behind them, that dazzling sword light followed swiftly, flashing brightly. There was no space to dodge. Mei Shuayan roared with rage, and the long sword in her hand abruptly slashed down flagrantly. The tip of her blade trembled intensely as a huge wall of light appeared before her, stretching from the ground to the sky, blindingly dazzling. Tian Fa Heaven's sword. Two similarly dazzling sword light then smashed into each other. Boom! 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 Three loud explosions rang out. In an instant, the three experts' bodies turned into a mess of blood and gore which flew around Mei Shuayan. The force of the explosions was powerful, directly causing this 20 zhang area of land to rise and break apart in the air. A low grunt rang out as Mei Shuayan appeared from within the dust cloud, rapidly retreating. A section of her white dress had been torn away, and a line of blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Her face was also as white as a sheet of paper. This dual perishment attack had caused Mei Shuayan to suffer heavy injuries as well. At this point, Mei Shuayan finally understood. Quite obviously, these experts from the illusory blood sea had trained in this kamikaze battle style for a long time already. Otherwise, it was impossible for them to have this level of coordination. Why would these experts go and train in this kind of crazy battle style for no good reason? It was naturally planned in advance to deal with her. It turns out that even if the elusive world of immortals had not done anything, the illusory blood sea would still have taken action. Mei Shuayan screamed with rage, her heart filled with extreme pain. At that time, the three Holy Lands had yet to cast aside all considerations of face, but they had actually all been preparing to deal with her. These were all her battlemates in the war for seizing the heavens. Where was their conscience? What happened to justice? Mei Shuayan finally saw the truth in Jun Mo Xie's words now. These people had been determined to deal with Tian Fa Forest no matter the consequences. There was no room for any mistakes. Tian Fa Forest, in the eyes of the three holy lands, was an even more frightening opponent than the strange races. Mei Shuayan's shrill scream broke through the air, reverberating around the mountains and valleys. Loud booms rang out seemingly near and far away, like the rumbling thunder. The snow on the tall peaks in the area shuddered and fell, bringing an avalanche with large pieces of rocks and snow. A single shout from Mei Shuayan had triggered a massive avalanche, one that caused even the sky to change color. This story will be continued to chapter 611. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.